It started as an ordinary Thursday coffee gone cold on my counter, my hair still damp from a shower I'd taken too quickly, a pile of student papers on the table because I kept pretending I wasn't falling behind. The city outside my apartment window looked like it always did. Gray morning haze, impatient horns, people moving like they had somewhere safe to be. I didn't. Not anymore. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Then it buzzed again, immediately like the caller refused to be dismissed. Hello? My voice came out softer than I intended. Silence. A breath. Not shaky, not nervous. Controlled, like the person on the other end decided whether the world deserved sound. Then low and even, "Do not leave your apartment today." My stomach tightened. "Who is this?" "Do not," he repeated, the same calm pressure. "Leave your apartment." I felt my throat close around a laugh I couldn't force out. "You can't just call me and—" A click. He hung up. I stared at my phone. My fingers trembled in a way that felt childish, humiliating like. My body knew something my mind hadn't caught up to. I told myself it was a prank. A scam. A wrong number. Then my doorbell rang. Once. Then twice, louder. I went to the peephole. A man in a black suit stood outside my apartment door like he belonged in front of a courthouse, not in my narrow hallway with scuffed paint and flickering lights. Another man stood a step behind him. Same suit, same stillness. The first man looked directly into the peephole. My breath stalled. That wasn't possible. He couldn't see me, but it felt like he could. My hand hovered over the lock. A memory flashed my mother, years ago, telling me never to open the door to strangers, her voice sharp with a fear I hadn't inherited until now. The doorbell rang again. I backed away, heart hammering. "I'm not opening the door." A voice came through the wood, muffled but firm. "Miss Hart, please, you need to come with us." My skin went cold. They knew my name. I swallowed. "Why?" "We can explain in the car. I'm not going anywhere." A pause. Then the voice lowered, respectful in a way that made it worse. "If you stay here, you will be hurt." I pressed my palm to my mouth to keep myself quiet. My apartment suddenly felt too small, like the walls were moving inward. I wanted to call the police. I wanted to call my best friend. I wanted my mother, even though she was gone. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. My thumb hovered, then answered. "Hello?" His voice again controlled, calm, terrifyingly certain. "You're wasting time." "Who are you?" I whispered. "You were told not to leave." "My door there are men, I sent them." My knees went weak. I sank onto the edge of my couch, as if my body needed something solid to keep from collapsing. "Why?" A beat, then, as if he were choosing his words carefully, "Because someone else is coming." My mouth went dry. "To do what? To take you," he said simply. "And that would be inconvenient." Inconvenient. Inconvenient. Like I was an object misplaced. Like my fear was background noise. I swallowed hard. "I don't understand. You don't have to. You have to move." I stared at the hallway through my living room, at my door like it had turned into a mouth that could swallow me. My voice cracked. "I hated that it did. I'm not going with strangers." A sigh, quiet, controlled. "Then I'll come myself." Something about the promise of him appearing made my stomach twist tighter than the threat outside my door. "Who are you?" I asked again, softer this time. A pause. Then he said, almost like a warning he didn't enjoy giving, "If you call me by my first name again, you'll learn why it mattered." My mind snagged on the words. Again? I never. The call ended. I stared at the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen like I could force it to make sense. Then movement outside my window. A car I didn't recognize slid into the curb below. Black, sleek, the kind of luxury car that looked wrong on my street, like a blade laid casually on a kitchen counter. 2 more cars followed. My blood drained from my face. This wasn't a prank. This was organized. My doorbell stopped ringing. For a second, there was silence. Then metallic scraping. My breath caught. Someone was doing something to my lock. A sound like the building itself flinched. I stumbled backward, eyes wide, hands useless at my sides, a harsh crackwood splintering. My door buckled inward. And then men poured into my apartment like smoke fast, dark, purposeful. Not the suited men from the hall. These wore street clothes. Their faces were hard. Their eyes didn't look at my couch, my table, my papers. They looked at me like I was the only thing in the room worth taking. I couldn't scream. My chest locked up. One of them lunged. A hand grabbed my wrist. Pain shot up my arm. "Move," he snapped. My lips parted, but only a broken sound came out. Then the apartment filled with something else. Not noise, not shouting. Presence. Like the air became heavy. Like the room remembered what fear really was. The men froze just half a second too late. A voice came from my doorway, low and calm. "Let her go." I looked toward the entrance. A man stood there. Not rushed, not breathless, not panicked. He wore a dark coat over a suit that fit like it had been tailored onto him. His hair was black, neatly cut. His face sharp lines, controlled expression, eyes that didn't flicker. His gaze went to the hand on my wrist. The man holding me tightened his grip, maybe out of defiance, maybe out of terror. The newcomer walked in, slow as a threat. "My patience," he said quietly, "is not endless." The men who'd broken in shifted, uncertain. One reached behind his waistband. I didn't even realize I was shaking until my teeth clicked. The man at the door, the calm one, tilted his head like he was bored. Then it happened so fast my mind couldn't keep up. A gunshot cracked the air. I flinched so hard I thought my spine would snap. The man who'd reached for his waistband dropped like his bones had been unplugged. My scream finally broke loose, thin, panicked. The hand on my wrist released me as if I'd turned to fire. I stumbled backward, crashing into my couch. The calm man walked forward, stepping around the fallen body like it was furniture. His eyes met mine, and in that moment, with my heart racing and my skin cold and my whole world splitting open, I understood something I didn't want to know. This man wasn't here to save me because he was kind. He was here because he owned the outcome. He looked at me like he'd already decided what would happen to me next. His voice, when he spoke, was softer than the gunshot and somehow more violent. "Come with me, Elena." My breath caught at my name on his tongue, too intimate, too accurate. I hadn't told him. I couldn't stop myself. The words spilled out, terrified and confused, like a child grabbing for rules in a burning house. "Who are you?" His jaw tightened just slightly. His eyes darkened in a way that made my stomach twist. And then he said, very calmly, as if he warned me already, and now we were beyond warnings, "If you call me by my first name again," he stepped closer, close enough that I smelled clean cologne and something colder beneath it. Steel, maybe. "Control. I'll show you why it mattered." I stared at him, shaking, trying to find the line where fear ended and sense began. But the line was gone, and behind him, in my broken doorway, the city looked like a stranger. My normal life papers, coffee, routines, was already dead on the floor, bleeding out beside the man he'd shot. He held out his hand, not gentle, not cruel, final. I didn't want to take it. But the world had already decided I didn't get to want things anymore, so I stood me trembling, throat tight, and I reached for him like I had no other way to stay alive. And when my fingers touched his, the last part of me that still believed in safety shattered. The hallway outside my apartment smelled like dust and old paint and someone's burnt toast, normal smells that suddenly felt obscene. His men moved around us with sharp efficiency, stepping over debris, speaking into earpieces, checking corners. The suited men I'd seen earlier were there now too, weapons hidden but ready. He didn't rush me. That was the worst part. He walked at my pace as if my shaking legs were an inconvenience he could afford. I kept my arms wrapped around myself because my body didn't know what else to do. My wrist throbbed where I'd been grabbed. When we reached the elevator, he pressed the button himself. The doors opened with a ding that felt too cheerful for the blood still ringing in my ears. I stepped in, he followed. The doors slid shut, sealing us into a narrow, mirrored box. I stared at the floor. I could see his shoes, expensive, perfectly polished, untouched by the chaos upstairs. My voice came out small. "Did you kill him?" A pause. Yes. No apology. No justification. Just truth. My stomach rolled. The elevator moved. I didn't want to look at him, but the mirror forced me to see him anyway. His face, calm and unreadable. His eyes fixed on the elevator doors like this was a meeting, not a kidnapping with a rescue attached. My hands trembled. "Am I under arrest?" I asked, because I couldn't think of any other category that made sense. "No." "Then what is this?" He finally looked at me in the mirror. His gaze pinned me, not hungry, not playful. Possessive in a way that didn't need words. "You're under protection," he said. I swallowed. "Against my will?" A fraction of a pause. For now. The elevator dinged again. The doors opened to the lobby. Two doormen stared too hard and then stared away too fast. Outside, the black car waited. One of his men opened the rear door. I froze on the sidewalk. The city suddenly too bright, too loud, cars passing, people walking, none of them realizing my life had just been ripped apart. My throat tightened. I can't just disappear. I have work, my students. He stepped closer, not touching me, but close enough that my breath caught. "You're alive," he said quietly. "That's what matters." I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. I hated myself for it, for being so fragile, so visibly breakable. "I don't even know your name," I whispered. His gaze didn't soften, but something in him shifted like a door closing. "You don't need it," he said. "I do," I insisted, then immediately regretted the sharpness in my voice. It wasn't brave. It was panic dressed as anger. He studied me for a long second, then he leaned in, just enough that his voice dropped into something only I could hear. "You already know it," he said. "That's why you're alive." My breath hitched. What did that mean? Before I could ask, he gestured toward the car with a small tilt of his head. A command without words. My legs moved because my fear moved them. I slid into the back seat. Leather. Cool. The scent of money and control. He got in beside me, not pressed close, but close enough that the heat of him reached my skin. The door shut. The city became glass behind tinted windows. The car pulled away. I watched my building disappear, my apartment, my broken door gone, behind us like it had never belonged to me. My voice cracked. "Where are you taking me?" He looked forward, one arm resting along the seat, relaxed in a way that didn't match the guns outside. "My house," he said. The word house sounded wrong, like calling a cathedral a room. My heart pounded. "Why?" "Because you're not safe anywhere else." I stared at him. "From who?" His jaw flexed once. "From the people who think you're leverage," he said. Leverage. That word made me feel small in a new way, flattened into usefulness. "I'm nobody," I whispered. He finally turned his head and looked at me fully. And I realized then that his calm wasn't indifference. It was discipline. Like if he let himself feel something, it would be catastrophic. "You're not nobody," he said. My throat tightened. "To who?" A pause so brief I almost missed it. "To me," he said, and then looked away again. My breath caught. I didn't understand it, but the words hit me like a hand closing around my ribs. The car sped through streets that turned darker, cleaner, quieter. We passed clubs with velvet ropes, restaurants with gold-lettered signs, and buildings that looked like they belonged to people who never feared a broken door. I pressed my forehead to the window, trying not to cry, trying not to fall apart in front of him. Because something in me, soft and stupid and desperate, wanted him to think I was worth protecting, and that thought terrified me more than the gunshot. The mansion wasn't a mansion in the way movies made them look. It was worse. It sat behind iron gates and silent trees, the kind of property that swallowed sound. The driveway curved like it was designed to hide rivals. As the car rolled to a stop, I stared up at the stone facade, the tall windows reflecting the night like black mirrors. My hands were clenched in my lap. He got out first. A man opened my door. "Miss." I hesitated. Then his voice came from above me, calm, commanding. "Elena?" Just my name. My body obeyed before my mind could argue. I stepped out. Cold night air hit my face. Somewhere distant, water moved fountains, maybe. Somewhere closer, security lights hummed. He stood at the base of the steps waiting. When I reached him, he didn't touch me. He simply turned and walked, and I followed, because the alternative was standing alone in the dark with no door that belonged to me anymore. Inside, the house smelled like polished wood and expensive restraint. The foyer was wide, marble underfoot, a chandelier above that looked like frozen fire. A woman appeared, older, stern, dressed impeccably. She looked at him first, then at me. "Sir," she said, and there was something careful in her tone. "Respect, but also fear. Prepare the blue room," he said. The woman's eyes flicked to me again, then down. "Yes, sir." I wrapped my arms tighter around myself. "I don't want a room. I want to go home." He stopped walking. The sudden stillness felt like stepping too close to a cliff. He turned slowly. His gaze landed on my face, then dropped to my bruised wrist. Something dark crossed his expression so fast it was almost invisible. "You don't have a home tonight," he said. The words weren't cruel. They were final. My eyes burned. "You can't decide that." He took one step closer, and the space between us shrank until my breath felt trapped. "I decide what keeps you breathing," he said quietly. I flinched, not because he raised his voice, he didn't, because his calm made it real. Behind him, men moved silently through the halls like shadows obeying him. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" A pause. Then he answered honestly, and it made my stomach drop. "Nothing," he said. "That's the problem." I stared at him, confused. "You're in the middle of something you didn't choose," he continued, "and you're soft enough to get crushed by it." Soft. I hated how true it was. He turned again and started walking. A hallway opened into a room with dark blue walls and a fireplace that wasn't lit. The bed looked untouched by sleep, like no one had ever been allowed to be messy here. "This is yours," he said. I stood in the doorway, not stepping in. My voice came out thin. "Am I your hostage?" His eyes narrowed slightly. Then, very controlled, "No." I swallowed. "Then why can't I leave?" He stepped closer again, and this time he reached out. Not to grab, not to force, just to lift my bruised wrist gently, like he was handling something breakable. My breath hitched at the contact. His fingers were warm, steady. He looked at the bruise like it offended him. "Because they'll take you," he said, quieter now, "and they won't bring you back." My throat tightened. "Who are they?" His gaze lifted to mine, and for a moment, I saw something beneath the calm something, like a fissure in stone. "Rivals," he said, "and politicians who pretend they're not criminals." My stomach turned. He released my wrist, and the warmth disappeared too quickly. "Rest," he said. I whispered, "What do I call you?" He paused at the door. The air changed again. He didn't turn fully. Just enough that I saw his profile, hard and beautiful, in a way that didn't feel safe to look at. "You call me Mr. DeSantis," he said. My heart skipped. DeSantis. I knew that name. Everyone in the city did, even if they pretended they didn't. My lips parted. He cut me off before I could finish. "Yes," he said. "Now you understand why you're here." Then he left. The door shut, and I stood alone in a room too expensive to feel like comfort, shaking so hard I had to sit on the edge of the bed to keep from collapsing. On the bedside table, a glass of water waited like someone had anticipated my thirst. Beside it sat a single object, small, heavy-looking, a silver ring. Not feminine, not decorative, a signet ring. I didn't touch it, but it felt like a symbol placed there on purpose, a motif of ownership without words. I stared at it until my eyes blurred, and all I could think was, I didn't belong here, and yet the mansion had swallowed me whole. The next morning, I woke to silence so complete it felt unnatural. No neighbors arguing, no footsteps in the hall, no city noise, just the low hum of a house that ran on secrets. I sat up slowly, heart racing as if I'd dreamed everything. Then my wrist throbbed. Reality returned. I got out of bed, padding barefoot across the thick rug. The windows were tall, but the curtains were heavy. When I pulled them back, I saw manicured gardens and security cameras tucked into corners like insects. A prison dressed as luxury. A soft knock came at the door. I froze. "Miss Hart?" a woman's voice called. "Breakfast." I opened the door a crack. The stern woman from last night stood there holding a tray, expression unreadable. "Thank you," I whispered. She stepped inside, placed the tray on a small table, and then, without looking at me directly, said, "You should eat. It will be a long day." My stomach tightened. "Why?" She hesitated, then glanced toward the hallway like the walls had ears. "Because there is a wedding tonight," she said quietly. A wedding. The word hit me with a strange dread. Cinematic, shore flowers, gowns, music. But in this house, it sounded like a threat. "My wedding?" I blurted, then immediately regretted it. The woman's eyes widened just slightly. "No," she said quickly. "Not yours." Relief and confusion tangled in my chest. Before I could ask more, she left. I stared at the tray fruit, bread, eggs arranged perfectly. I ate only because my hands wouldn't stop shaking and I needed something to anchor me. A few hours later, the door opened without a knock. He walked in like he owned my air. Mr. DeSantis. His coat was gone. He wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled, a watch at his wrist that looked like it could buy my entire apartment building. He didn't glance at my breakfast. He glanced at me. "You slept," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. He studied my face like he was cataloging what fear had done to me overnight. "Tonight," he said. "You're coming with me." My stomach dropped. "Where?" "A wedding." My fingers curled into the bedsheet. "Why would I?" "Because you're the message," he said calmly. I stared at him. "I'm not a message." His gaze sharpened. "To them, you are." I swallowed hard. "To who?" He walked closer, and even without touching me, I felt cornered. "The family that tried to take you," he said. "They need to see you standing beside me, beside him, in public, at a wedding." My throat tightened. "I can't do that." His voice lowered, not softer, more dangerous. "You can." Tears burned behind my eyes. "I don't want to be in your world." A pause. Then, very controlled, "You already are." I shook my head, breath trembling. "I don't even know why this is happening." His jaw flexed. And for a moment, it looked like he wanted to say something he wasn't allowed to. Instead, he reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. A phone. "Call whoever you need," he said. "Tell them you're safe. But don't tell them where you are." My lips parted. That wasn't kindness. It was strategy. But it still felt like consideration. I stared at the phone, then up at him. "If I try to leave?" His gaze didn't move. "You won't." "I might," I whispered. He stepped closer until I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the controlled stillness of him like a predator at rest. "If you try," he said quietly, "I'll stop you." No raised voice, no threats, just inevitability. My body reacted before my mind, my pulse fluttered, my skin prickled, and I hated it, because my fear wasn't only fear anymore. It was something else, confusion. A pull I didn't ask for. He turned toward the door as if the conversation was finished. Then he paused, looking back over his shoulder. "Do not call me by my first name," he said again, calm as ice. "Not here, not ever." I swallowed, voice barely there. "Why?" His eyes darkened, and for the first time I heard the fracture beneath his control. "Because the last person who did," he said, "died thinking they knew me." Then he left, and the walls of the mansion felt closer than ever. They dressed me like a doll. Not in something obscene, nothing revealing, nothing designed to make me bold. Just expensive, a pale blue gown that clung softly at the waist, sleeves like mist, fabric that whispered when I moved. Someone pinned my hair back in a low twist. Someone else fastened earrings that glittered like tiny frozen tears. I watched in the mirror, feeling like I was watching another girl. A girl who belonged in a world of chandeliers and bloodlines. Not me. When the door opened, he was there. In a black suit, perfectly cut, tied dark as ink. His hair was neat, his expression unreadable, but his eyes paused on me in a way that made my breath catch. He didn't compliment me. He didn't smile. He just held his hand out. A silent demand. I hesitated, my fingers trembling. Then I placed my hand in his. His grip was firm, warm, steady. And suddenly I understood what people meant when they talked about power without shouting. He led me downstairs. The mansion was alive. Now men in suits, women in sleek dresses, voices low, footsteps controlled. Outside, luxury cars lined the drive like a fleet. He guided me into the back of one, sitting beside me again, close enough that his presence filled my senses. I stared straight ahead. The car pulled into night streets lit by neon and gold. The wedding venue was a cathedral-turned-event space, old stone, stained glass glowing under floodlights, security everywhere. Inside, music swelled, flowers spilled over arches. Guests shimmered in money and menace. And when we entered, the room shifted. People turned. Whispers rippled. I felt every stare like fingers on my skin. He didn't look at them. He looked forward, leading me through the crowd like he was cutting a path. I tried to keep my breathing steady. Tried not to flinch. Then I saw the bride, beautiful, trembling smile. Eyes too bright. The groom looked older, hard-faced, his hand on her waist like a claim. The room smelled like perfume and champagne. And underneath it, something metallic. Danger. He stopped near the front, beside a row of men who all looked like they'd never heard the word no. One of them turned. A man with slick hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. His gaze landed on me. Then he looked at Mr. DeSantis, and his smile sharpened. "Well," the man said, voice smooth as oil, "you brought her." Mr. DeSantis didn't answer. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice like this was intimacy. "She doesn't look like your type." My stomach twisted. I wanted to shrink behind him, but I couldn't move. "Mr. Preef," DeSantis finally spoke, calm and quiet. "She's not for you to look at. Not loud, not dramatic." But the man's smile faltered just slightly. I stared at the floor, cheeks burning, not from desire, from humiliation and fear and the strange safety of being shielded. The man leaned in anyway, ignoring the warning. "Tell me, sweetheart," he murmured to me, "do you know whose house you're sleeping in?" My throat closed. I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. "Mr. Pye." DeSantis's hand moved subtle, controlled, resting at the small of my back. Not possessive in words. Protective in action. The man's gaze flicked to the hand, then back to Mr. DeSantis. "Tense," he said lightly. "It's a wedding. Try to behave." Mr. DeSantis's voice dropped even lower. "Walk away." The man held his gaze a second too long. Then he smiled again, but it was forced now. "Of course." He stepped back into the crowd. I exhaled shakily. My body was trembling. Mr. DeSantis didn't look down at me. He kept his eyes on the room, scanning like a weapon, but his hand remained at my back, a point of contact that felt like a boundary. The ceremony began. Vows, music, applause. I'd barely heard any of it, All I could feel was his presence beside me, the way the room seemed to orbit around his calm authority. And somewhere in my chest, beneath the fear, something softened. Not trust. Not yet, but the smallest, most dangerous beginning of it. The reception blurred into lights and laughter that didn't sound real. I stood beside him as people approached, smiling, greeting, offering congratulations that felt like performances. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I didn't know where to look. Every time I shifted too far, his hand returned, guiding me back, anchoring me, not a caress, a decision. At one point, a woman in red approached, eyes sharp and curious. "Aless," she started. The air changed. Instantly, Mr. DeSantis's head turned and the woman stopped mid-word. Her smile froze. She corrected herself quickly. "Mr. DeSantis, forgive me." He didn't respond, but I felt the tension in him like a wire pulled taut. The woman looked at me, assessing. "And this must be?" His hand tightened slightly at my back. "This is Elena," he said. "No last name," he said. No last name. No explanation, just my name, spoken like it was enough. The woman's eyes narrowed. Interesting. She left. I swallowed, heart racing. When the music rose louder and guests filled the dance floor, he guided me away through a hallway, past private rooms, to a quieter corridor lined with old portraits. We stopped near a closed door. He leaned one hand on the wall beside me, not touching me but blocking my path without pressing. My breath caught. I looked up at him, eyes wide. "You're shaking," he said. My voice broke. "I don't know how to do this." A pause, his gaze softened barely, like a crack in marble. "You're doing it," he said quietly. Tears stung my eyes. "Why me?" His jaw tightened, and then something I didn't expect. He looked away. Just for a second. Like he couldn't hold my gaze and keep control at the same time. When he spoke, his voice was low, strained beneath the calm. "Because you spoke my first name once," he said. I stared, confused. "I didn't." He looked back at me, eyes dark. "You did." My mind scrambled. Memories flashed, my mother's stories, whispers from childhood, a fundraiser at my college years ago, a man introduced behind velvet curtains. And then it hit me. A name spoken in passing, a moment I'd forgotten because it meant nothing to me then. His first name. My breath caught. I didn't mean, I know," he cut in, quiet but sharp. Then his voice dropped. "But you said it like you weren't afraid." I swallowed hard. He leaned closer, not to kiss, not to touch, just close enough that I felt his warmth. "And in my world," he said, "people only use my first name when they think they're close enough to betray me." My chest tightened. I whispered, "So you think I'll betray you?" His gaze held mine, unblinking. "No," he said. The certainty in that single word shook me. "Then why does it matter?" I breathed. His expression tightened like he'd reached the edge of something he couldn't step over. "It matters," he said, "because when you said it, I wanted to let you." My breath stopped. The words hung between us. Dangerous, quiet, intimate in a way that terrified me. I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know what to do with the way my body reacted, my pulse fluttering, my throat tight, my hands trembling harder. I looked down, ashamed of myself for feeling anything but fear. His voice softened, almost unwillingly. "You don't understand what you do to the room," he said. I shook my head, tears slipping free. "I don't do anything." He lifted his hand slowly, controlled and brushed a tear off my cheek with his thumb. The touch was so gentle, it broke something inside me. I froze, breathing shallow. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He just held my gaze, thumb lingering at my cheek as if he was memorizing the feeling. Then he withdrew, like restraint, physically hurt him. "Stay close tonight," he said. "Do not wander." I nodded because I couldn't speak. He turned away. And I realized with a sick twist of fear, the walls weren't only closing because of his enemies, they were closing because of him. and because of what I was starting to feel when he looked at me like that. We left the wedding under a sky, the color of bruises. In the car, I sat rigid, hands clenched together, trying to breathe through the storm in my chest. He didn't speak, neither did I. But silence with him wasn't empty. It was loaded. Back at the mansion, the halls were dim. The staff moved quietly, like the house itself was holding its breath. He walked me to the blue room. At the door, he paused, his gaze dropped to my face, then my lips only for a moment. My heart stuttered. He didn't touch me. Not yet. "Did anyone speak to you alone?" he asked. I shook my head quickly. "No." "Did anyone threaten you?" I hesitated. "Not directly." His eyes narrowed. "Names." My throat tightened. "A man. Slick hair. He asked if I knew whose house I was sleeping in." A muscle in his jaw jumped. He looked away, just briefly, like he was deciding whether to break something. Then his gaze returned to me. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I shook my head. But my voice cracked. "I'm scared." Something in his expression shifted. Darkness, yes, but also something like resolve. He stepped closer. My breath caught. He lifted a hand, slow and deliberate, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was careful, like he was afraid of frightening me more. My skin tingled where he touched, and my eyes filled again because I didn't understand why gentleness from someone like him felt like drowning. "I know," he said quietly. I whispered, "Why do you keep me here?" His hand dropped. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he spoke. Voice low, controlled, and honest in a way that made my chest ache. "Because when they came for you," he said, "I realized I couldn't let them have you." My breath shook out of me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He stepped closer until there was barely space between us. I felt his warmth, the steady strength of him, the scent of his cologne. My hands trembled at my sides. He lifted his fingers, brushing them lightly over my bruised wrist again, so gentle it made my throat close. "You don't have to be brave," he said. Tears spilled. "I don't know how to be." He leaned in, forehead almost touching mine. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just closeness that felt like a confession. "Then be honest," he murmured. My voice was barely sound. I feel safer when you're near." The words shocked me as they left my mouth. His breath stilled. His eyes darkened, but not with cruelty. With hunger, he was forcing himself to swallow. He whispered, "Say that again." I shook my head, embarrassed, trembling. "I can't." He exhaled slowly. Then he did something I didn't expect. He stepped back, creating space, giving me air. My lungs dragged it in, ragged. His voice was rougher now. "Look at me." I lifted my eyes. He held my gaze like he was trying to anchor himself. "If I touch you," he said, "it will change things." My breath caught. I didn't move. He continued, quiet and steady. "I will not take what you don't give." My lips parted, but no words came. Consent felt like a foreign language in a house built on command. He waited. The silence stretched until my heartbeat filled my ears. My hands trembled. My chest ached. I didn't feel bold. I felt confused, like I was standing at the edge of something too deep. But I also felt something else. A surrender that wasn't desire spoken loud. It was silence. It was the way my body stopped pulling away. It was the way my gaze stayed on him even when fear told me to run. He read it. Slowly, he stepped forward again. This time, he lifted my chin with 2 fingers, gentle but certain. His mouth hovered near mine. He paused, waiting. My breath shook. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. But I didn't turn away, and that was all the permission I had inside me. His lips touched mine softly, not demanding, not punishing. A kiss that felt like restraint breaking carefully, like he was afraid of shattering me. I made a small sound, more breath than voice, and my hands lifted instinctively, hovering at his chest like I didn't know if I was allowed to hold on. He caught my wrists gently and guided my hands to rest against him, grounding me. I felt his heartbeat steady, controlled but faster than before. He kissed me again, still slow, still careful. My knees trembled. He pulled back just enough to look at me. His voice was low, strained. "Tell me to stop, Elena." My throat tightened. I shook my head, tears clinging to my lashes. He stared at me for a long second. Then his hand slid to the back of my neck, fingers threading into my hair. He kissed me again, this time deeper, but still controlled, like he was holding himself on a leash. My body softened in a way that scared me. I leaned into him without meaning to. He made a quiet sound, almost a groan, almost a breath of relief, and his arms wrapped around me, pulling me close. I felt the strength of him, the danger of him, and the way he held me like he decided nothing else would touch me. We moved, slowly, like he refused to rush the moment. He guided me to the bed, never pushing, always watching my face, reading every flinch. When I sat, he knelt in front of me, knelt, and the sight made my breath catch with a strange ache. His hands rested on my knees, warm through the fabric. "You're shaking," he murmured. I swallowed hard, voice trembling. "I've never," he looked up, eyes dark with something that felt like reverence and possession braided together. "I know," he said. He stood slowly and kissed my forehead. Then my cheek, then my lips again, soft, reassuring. He undressed me like he was unwrapping something sacred, not taking. I held my breath through it, cheeks burning, eyes wet, my hands clutching the sheets because I didn't know what to do with myself. He never spoke anything explicit. He never demanded. He asked with his eyes, with pauses, with stillness. And every time, my answer was the same, hesitant, silent, trembling. Yes, because I trusted him not to hurt me. Yes, because I didn't want him to step away. When he finally joined me, the intimacy was slow and emotional, more about closeness than hunger. I cried quietly, overwhelmed, and he kissed the tears away without a word, holding me like he was anchoring me to the world. After, he lay beside me, one arm around my waist, pulling me against his chest. My body felt like it wasn't mine anymore, soft, exhausted, stunned by how safe I felt in the arms of someone who could destroy people with a quiet voice. He spoke into my hair, voice low. "You're mine," he said once. Not as a boast, as a vow. My breath caught. I didn't answer with words. I just pressed closer, trembling, surrendering to the truth that terrified me. I didn't want to leave. It happened the next night. I was in the library, a room lined with dark shelves and leather chairs because I couldn't sleep, and the mansion felt too quiet, like it was waiting. He'd left earlier for a meeting. He'd said, "Stay inside." And I had, because I didn't know how not to. The fire crackled low. I was curled on the couch with a blanket, staring at the flames like they could tell me what I'd become. Then glass shattered. Not in the room. Downstairs. My body jolted upright. Footsteps running. Voices sharp, urgent. Then a gunshot. I screamed, the sound ripping out of me before I could stop it. The door burst open. A guard appeared, eyes wide. "Miss Hart, come with me now." My hand shook so hard I couldn't stand. Another gunshot cracked, closer. The guard grabbed my arm, not rough, but urgent. We moved into the hallway. The mansion was no longer quiet. It was chaos. Men shouting, feet pounding, the sound of gunfire echoing through stone. My heart hammered like it wanted out of my chest. We reached a staircase, and then a man appeared at the bottom, holding a gun. Not one of Mr. DeSantis's men. His eyes locked on me. A smile twisted his mouth. "There you are," he said. My breath stopped. The guard pushed me behind him, weapon raised. Shots fired. The guard dropped with a choked sound. Blood spread across the marble. My scream broke again, raw and terrified. I stumbled backward, slipping on the rug. The intruder advanced, gun aimed at my chest like it was nothing. My body froze. I couldn't run. I couldn't breathe. Then another presence. The air shifted. A door slammed somewhere behind him. footsteps slow, controlled, like death walking. Mr. Prez. DeSantis appeared at the edge of the hall, gun in hand, face carved from ice. His gaze landed on me wide-eyed, shaking, and something in his expression broke. Not into softness, into fury. The intruder turned, gun raised. Too late. Mr. DeSantis fired. Once, twice, the intruder dropped, blood blooming across his shirt. Silence fell heavy, ringing. I stood frozen, staring at the body, at the blood, at the guard on the floor. My stomach heaved. I covered my mouth, gagging. Mr. DeSantis crossed the hall in 3 strides and caught me before my knees hit the floor. His arms wrapped around me, tight. My body shook violently. I couldn't stop. He held my face between his hands, forcing me to look at him. "Are you hit?" he demanded, voice low and sharp. I shook my head frantically, tears streaming. He pulled me against his chest, one hand cradling the back of my head, the other around my waist like a vise. His heartbeat was pounding, not calm anymore. Rage and fear tangled in it. He spoke into my hair, voice rough. "They touched my house." I trembled harder. He lifted my chin again, eyes burning into mine. "They saw you," he said. "That ends tonight." I couldn't speak. My throat was locked with terror. He turned his head, barking orders to his men, cleaning, securing, calling someone. Then he carried me like I weighed nothing, upstairs into the blue room. He kicked the door shut behind us and set me on the bed. He knelt in front of me again, hands gripping my knees, eyes scanning my face like he was checking for cracks. "You saw it," he said. I nodded, sobbing silently. His voice dropped, breaking at the edges. "I didn't want you to see me like that." I swallowed, shaking. "But that's who you are." His eyes flinched, like the truth hurt him. "Yes," he said. "And now you understand what you're tied to." I stared at him through tears, and then, quietly, because it was the only thing I could offer him in the aftermath of violence, "I'm still here," I whispered. His breath hitched. For a moment, he looked like a man at the edge of something he couldn't survive. Then he leaned forward and pressed his forehead to mine, hands trembling just slightly. "Don't leave me," he murmured. The words weren't a command. They were an emotional breaking point. I closed my eyes, shaking, and nodded. Because the truth was, I didn't know how to leave anymore. The next day, the mansion smelled like bleach and flowers. Like violence could be erased if you cleaned hard enough. But I couldn't erase what I'd seen. The guard's blood on marble, the intruder's smile. Mr. DeSantis's face when he shot him, calm, lethal, absolute. I sat in the blue room, knees drawn up, staring at my bruised wrist like it was a timeline. A knock came. He entered quietly. No suit today, just a dark sweater, sleeves pushed up, revealing forearms marked by faint scars I hadn't noticed before. He looked tired, not physically. Emotionally, he stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed to step closer. "You should go," he said finally. My heart stuttered. "What?" His jaw tightened. "I can move you. Out of the city, somewhere quiet." I stared at him, confused and scared. "You're letting me go?" He looked away. "Yes," he said, voice rough. "Because I won't watch you die in my house." My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, to run, to find my old life, but another part of me, the part that had felt safe in his arms, the part that had heard him whisper, "Don't leave me," like a prayer aged. I whispered, "If I go, will they stop?" He looked back at me, eyes dark. "No." My breath caught. "So I'll be in danger anywhere," I said. A pause. "Yes." I swallowed hard. Then, trembling, I asked the question that mattered more than my pride. "Do you want me to stay?" His gaze held mine. His voice came low, controlled, honest. "Yes," he said, "but I won't trap you." I stared at him, heart pounding. pounding. I didn't want to stay because he was powerful. I didn't want to stay because of the mansion or the cars or the men who obeyed him. I wanted to stay because when the world shattered, he had been the only solid thing. And because somewhere in the danger, I believed he would keep his promise not to take from me. I swung my legs off the bed, standing slowly on shaking knees. "I don't trust your world," I whispered. He didn't flinch, but my voice cracked. "I trust you." The words felt like stepping off a ledge. He stared at me like he'd been waiting to hear it and afraid he never would. I took a small step closer. Not bold, not seductive, just honest. "I'll stay," I whispered, "if you let me be more than leverage." His jaw tightened. He stepped forward, stopping just inches away. His hand lifted, hesitated, then cupped my cheek gently. "You're not leverage," he said. "You're the only thing in this house that feels clean." Tears stung my eyes. I leaned into his palm without thinking. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for days. Then he kissed my forehead, soft and restrained. No hunger, just connection. And in that quiet moment, I made my choice, not for power, but for trust, even if the cost would be blood. It ended in a place that began with vows, another wedding. Not because love demanded it, because politics did. Because families settled wars with rings and signatures and quiet threats. This time, the bride was a senator's daughter. The groom was a man with eyes like knives, and the room was filled with people who smiled while measuring how many bodies they could afford to lose. I stood beside Mr. DeSantis again, wearing black, this time simple, elegant, morning-colored. My hand rested lightly on his arm, not because I was bold enough to claim him, but because he'd positioned me there, and I'd learned what that meant. Protection, message, boundary. He leaned slightly toward me, voice low. "Stay close." I nodded. Music swelled. Guests watched us like we were a story they wanted to survive. Then the rival, the slick-haired man from before, appeared again, emerging from the crowd with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stopped in front of Mr. DeSantis, gaze flicking to me like a threat. "Beautiful night," he said. Mr. DeSantis's face didn't change. "Not for you." The man chuckled. "You've made this very public." Mr. DeSantis stepped forward just one step, enough to shift the air. "You wanted to see her beside me?" he said quietly. "Now you have." The rival's smile tightened. "And what happens when she's gone?" My breath caught. Mr. DeSantis didn't look at me, but his hand moved subtle, covering mine on his arm, grounding me, claiming the space without words. "She won't be," he said. The rival's eyes glittered. "Everyone has a price." Mr. DeSantis's gaze sharpened like a blade. "And everyone has a throat," he said softly. The rival's smile faltered. Around us, men shifted guards, allies, enemies pretending to be guests. The wedding continued like a dream you couldn't wake from. Then a scream cut through the room, a woman's shriek. Panic rippled. People turned. A man collapsed near the altar, clutching his chest, blood staining his shirt. Poison. My stomach turned. Mr. DeSantis's grip tightened on my hand. He pulled me back, guiding me behind him as his men moved like wolves. The rival family had struck not at him, but at the alliance. A message, no peace will stand. I trembled, pressed close behind him, staring at the chaos, guests fleeing, guards drawing weapons, the bride sobbing. Mr. DeSantis's voice came calm, terrifying. "Lock it down." His men obeyed. He turned his head slightly toward me, eyes dark. "Look at me," he said. I did. My breath shook. His thumb brushed my knuckles, gentle in the middle of disaster. "You're safe," he said. I nodded, tears burning. He leaned in just enough to speak only to me. "This is the cost," he said. "If you stay, there will always be blood near us." I swallowed, shaking. "And if I leave?" His eyes held mine, honest. "They'll still come." My chest tightened. The room was chaos, but in his gaze there was clarity. A kind of brutal truth. I whispered, then I stay. His breath hitched just slightly. A flicker of emotion crossed his face. Then he whispered, voice low, controlled, like a vow he didn't give lightly. You're mine. The second and final time. Not as ownership. As a promise of protection that could ruin us both, he straightened, turning back into the storm. He gave orders with calm authority, pulled strings with men who feared him, and by midnight the rival was gone, disappeared from the city as if swallowed by it. The senator's daughter lived. The alliance held barely. But the cost was paid in whispers, bodies, and fear. Later, back in the mansion, I stood at the window watching the gates below. Mr. DeSantis came behind me, quiet. He didn't touch me at first. Then his arms wrapped around my waist slowly, carefully, like he was asking even now. I leaned back into him, trembling. I whispered, "Will it ever end?" His breath warmed my hair. "No," he said. The honesty should have terrified me. It did. But it also steadied me, because fairy tales end clean. This wasn't clean. This was survival. This was love growing in the dark like a dangerous thing that refused to die. He kissed my temples softly. "You can still leave," he murmured. I turned in his arms, looking up at him, at the controlled face, the dark eyes, the man who killed to keep me breathing and held me like I mattered. My voice was quiet, shaking. "I don't want to." He didn't smile. But something in him eased, like a war paused, not won. He held me tighter. Outside, the night stayed watchful, and somewhere beyond the gates, another shadow waited. Another rival, another betrayal, another cost. But for now, in the quiet of his arms, I let myself breathe. Not because the world was safe, because he was, and because I'd chosen him anyway.